You miss out on a lot of life by being cheap. I'll tell you a quick story. I am friends with a local guy in town. He's a smart guy. He's very financially knowledgeable. Spent his whole career in finance. And I run into this guy socially, and he knows what I do, and he's always coming up to me and pumping me for information about the markets. So I said to him, like, dude, why don't you subscribe to my newsletter? I'll even give you a friends and family discount. I'll let you subscribe for $300. You can subscribe to my newsletter. Nope. Guy's cheap bastard. Okay. So I'm like, look, why don't you come to my conference? I'll give you a discount on the conference. I mean, you live locally. It's easy. Why don't you just come down and watch all the speakers? You get a lot out of it. Nope. Won't spend money on anything. So this isn't really about me being butthurt that somebody isn't giving me business. Like, it's fine. I don't care. But all I can think about is all the stuff this guy is missing out on because he's cheap. In addition to everything else he's missing out on because he's being cheap. You miss out on a lot of life by being cheap. If he got the newsletter, he would be enthralled with it. He would absolutely love it. I know it. And $300, not doing it, So, and he would get a lot of enjoyment out of the conference. He just won't do it. So, now I'm not talking about getting a $2,000 a night hotel room instead of a $300 a night hotel room. I'm not talking about stuff like that. There's easy ways to save money. Okay. You can go on vacation and you can do it frugally and you can have a good time. And you don't have to break the bank. I'm not talking about stuff like that. And by the way, when people start to save money, when they start getting tight, the first thing they really cheap out on is vacations, which is kind of weird, Like, to me, vacations are necessary. You need to take a break. You need to get a change of scenery. You need to travel out of the country, see different stuff. It really gives you perspective. I mean, for me, vacations are necessary. And, there's this whole thing about how millennials will spend money on experiences instead of things. I actually tend to agree with that. I think you should spend money on experiences. I think that's absolutely fantastic, So, like, for example, like the trip to Greece I took, I guess it was 2 years ago now. The trip cost $10,000. Okay. And for $10,000 is a lot of money, but I got to tell you, it was the best vacation I took in my entire life. It was absolutely worth it. Spending money to go try new things and go new places is absolutely priceless. But people won't do it. They get stuck on the number in the bank account. They're like, they just have to have money in the bank. You miss out on a lot of life by being cheap. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not like denigrating savings. Savings is terrific. I mean, if you have a goal, if you're saving for something, if you're saving for a house or a college education or something like that, by all means save and make sacrifices. Make sacrifices in order to save. That is a good thing to save for. But if there's nothing that you're saving for and you already have a ton of money, not to spend it on experiences and knowledge is just unthinkable. What is that money doing? Just sitting in your bank account. It's not doing anything. Absolutely nothing. So I ended up spending a little more than $50,000 on grad school, which is it's a decent amount of money. It's a lot of money, Now, first of all, this has been one of the best experiences of my life. It's been absolutely worth it. And second of all, I got 2 books out of it, and I'm going to make more on the books than I spent on grad school. I'm actually going to turn a profit on it, right? I would not have written these books if I didn't go to grad school. It's been the best thing for me. So imagine if 3 years ago I said, no, $50,000, too expensive. I'm not doing it. And I'm just going to miss out on life because I'm being cheap. It happens all the time. You're going to have regret. Or maybe you don't have regret. Maybe you're just totally ignorant of the things that you're missing out on. And the funny thing about spending money on stuff, I never regret spending money. I've only regretted spending money once in my life, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the Corvette that I bought, I don't regret spending money on that. It's been terrific, you know. I never regretted spending money on clothes. I wear the clothes. I never regretted spending money on watches. I wear the watches. The only thing I have ever regretted spending money on was the Can-Am motorcycle. Because, I rode it for a couple of years and it wasn't very practical and it was dangerous. And I used to get freaked out driving on the road. I'm like, it was a mistake. I shouldn't have bought it. And it cost $19,000 and I sold it for $3,000. So I lost $16,000 on that. So that was a stupid thing to spend money on. I lost $16,000 on the Can-Am, and I regret it. But that's the only thing in my entire life that I have regretted spending money on. And I think if you go through life and there's only one thing that you regret spending money on, I think you're doing pretty good. Most of the time I regret not spending money on stuff. Now, this may sound like I'm a free spender. It may sound like I'm a high roller, blowing cash all over the place. I'm really not. I save with the best of them. I'm one of the best savers in the world. I don't buy stuff I don't need. And I make sacrifices. I am making a bunch of sacrifices to get my house built, not spending money. Also, out of the universe of things that you could spend money on, a house is a pretty good thing. Now, I know that one of the things that I talk about is that the house is one of the three big things that you have to be careful with because you could financially kill yourself. If you buy too big of a house, you're going to spend too much in interest and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but a house is a pretty good thing to spend money on, A car is not a good thing to spend money on. And I stand by that assertion. Now, one thing I've found is that people usually have a pretty big allocation to real estate because they own their own home and a lot of the money goes towards debt service and the only money that they have is tied up in their house. And we can talk about the asset allocation issue. Lots of people are overexposed to real estate. They need more exposure to stocks. They need more exposure to bonds. They need more exposure to gold. They need more exposure to everything else. You want money in your house, but you want money in stocks and bonds and everything else for diversification purposes, naturally. Let me tell you one thing that I regret not spending money on. So as a DJ, I have a lot of, they're not MP3s, they're AIFF files, okay? They're like WAV files, okay? And I like to keep them on an iPod I listen to them in the car through Bluetooth, and I listen to them when I travel. And I have two of the iPod Touches. And I was sitting around, and I'm like, I should really buy one or two more of these iPod Touches because I know it's going to happen. Apple's going to discontinue them, and I'm going to be shit out of luck. And they're going to discontinue these things. And I looked, and they were like $350. I'm like, I don't want to spend $350. And sure enough, a couple months later, they discontinued the iPod Touch. So now I'm stuck. I have one that's about half full. I'm going to fill it up. And then I got no place to put music, So I should have spent the money, but I was being a dick for a tick. Now, if I want one, I got to buy some iPod Touch in the secondary market for like $1,000 or something like that. Like, I freaking screwed myself. Because I was being cheap. And lazy. So, I'll tell you something I spent money on recently. So when I was about 5 years old, I had a stuffed cat. It wasn't really a stuffed cat. It was a puppet cat. It was black. It was made by Stife. And this little stuffed cat was my best friend. I named him Edward. And he was my best friend of all time. I carried him everywhere, took him wherever I went. And when I was 5 years old, I lost him. I was living in New York City, living on Governor's Island. I went with my dad to check out stereo equipment, and I took Edward with me, and I must have put him down somewhere, and I lost him, and he called the stereo place, and they didn't have him, and I mean, I was destroyed by this. Like, I really, Like 45 years later, I still feel terrible about this. So I said to myself, I'm going to go see if I can get one on eBay. So I looked on eBay, and sure enough, there was Edward. It was a stuffed, it was a stiff cat, black puppet cat, just like I had. And for $100, I got him. And now I have him on a little stand on my shelf, and it's the best thing in the world. $100, you know, totally frivolous. But that was a part of my childhood, you know, and I was like regaining a part of my childhood. It was totally worth $100. So I've never regretted getting a cat. You know, when you have 7 cats, it gets pretty expensive. The litter, we go through cat litter like crazy, food, medical care, what else? Like boarding. It's a big expense. I mean, we probably spend $5,000 a year on the cats conservatively. I have never regretted getting a cat. You know, there's just some things you spend money on you just don't regret. So if you want to regret spending money, go spend $200,000 on a car. You know, for sure. Like, I say this as somebody who owns a $100,000 car. Spend $200,000 as a car, and you're not worth $1 million. Then that's a big mistake. Okay. You know what else you'll regret? Spending money on a wedding. $100,000 for one day, and there's all kinds of family drama, and everybody gets all pissed off, and just talk about like setting money on fire. Spending money on a wedding. So don't spend money on that. So thanks for listening to the Be Smart podcast. I'm Jared Dillian. See you next time.